Okay, good morning, everyone. We'll call the February 2017 action agenda for the Commonwealth Transportation Board to order. And I would point out that great evening last night for dinner. Not so good evening if you're a Cavalier fan with the basketball game. But anyway, appreciate everyone being here today. The first order of business would be our public comment. So I have Miss Nancy Smith signed up. Good morning, Miss Smith.
Good morning, Nancy Smith with the Northern Virginia Transportation Alliance. Good to see you this month. I just wanted to make a few initial observations of the smart scale process as you all begin your deliberations over project allocations. You have rightly noted that smart scale is an evolving process, or at least it should be. Under smart scale, the universe of eligible projects seems to be limited to those that local governments select. We believe this bottom-up project nomination, while it may have some merits, suggests that only projects that are considered politically acceptable at the moment are those that could be scored, and in a sense lacks a bigger picture perspective in terms of what projects are likely to be the most beneficial to the Commonwealth and the overall economy. Yesterday, Secretary Lane noted rightly that you as the CTB are charged with moving the needle on congestion mitigation around the Commonwealth. And moreover, the CTB, VDOT, and DRPT are the entities most responsible and most held accountable for constructing, operating, and maintaining the network to which state and federal funds are allocated. These standards do not apply to local governments that are submitting these projects. So how can taxpayers be certain that their tax dollars are being invested if those most responsible for investing and managing those dollars are denied input into what projects are being considered for funding? Smart Scale's motto is funding the right transportation projects in Virginia. So maybe yes, maybe no. A couple points. Is investing $2 million in a multimodal improvements in the city of Falls Church Residential Street the right investment for limited transportation dollars? Or $5 million for a trail in the city of Alexandria? Or does a roundabout ranking among the Commonwealth's best economic development investments or streetscape really instill taxpayer confidence that Smart Scale's rating system, its ability to identify the right and best transportation projects in Virginia? Again, the Alliance recognizes that Smart Scale is an evolving process, but we suggest that these and other examples point to the need to continue reviewing and making changes to the process. We also wonder to which extent some lower smart scale cost projects are simply funded because of their low cost and can be fit into the available funding pots as opposed to being investments truly worthy of scarce high priority and district funds. While spending a little money in a lot of places certainly benefits public officials, focusing more dollars on projects that move the most people and relieve the biggest choke points benefit more people and does more to help the state's economy and overall transportation network. Again, we believe that HB2's intent was to identify and invest in those projects that make the greatest difference, not simply those that are less expensive. So finally, I want to point out that it's important to remember that the smart scale scores are advisory. As you know, the quality of data certainly varies, and the methodology, as you have noted, is not flawless. But in their wisdom, the General Assembly legislated that in the end, common sense should prevail, and the ability to look at a map never goes away. The CTB, you have the power and responsibility to pick and choose to ensure that our limited transportation funds are being truly invested on the right projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Is there anyone else who would like to address the Commonwealth Transportation Board this morning? Okay, seeing none, that will end public comment. The first order of business would be the approval of the minutes from the January 18th meeting. Is there a motion? So moved. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
I did have one correction in the minutes.
Yes, one correction.
It said Mr. Fralin pointed out the policy under consideration was adopted on December 7th and did not understand the policy was being revisited a month later and did not understand why a blanket moratorium was needed. I think it just did not understand why. Yeah, I just want
Okay, so can we have
Made me look a little foolish.
friendly
do it
friendly
off.
amendment for the minutes there then?
He has so much to say, it's bound to get something wrong.
So moved for the amendment, so. Any more discussion? There's a motion and an amendment to approve the minutes as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes are for it. Okay, first up is Mr. Lawson.
Morning.
Good morning, sir.
Members of the board. I'm up here before you today on behalf of Susan Shaw. We wanted to save her the trip south this morning. Last month, she presented to you a couple items related to 95. The first item you have before you is related to the MOU that is to be executed between the Commissioner and the Federal Highway Administration in relation to the HOV lanes on 95. What this is doing is it's replacing the original agreement that was in place for 95 with the new style MOU that Federal Highway is now using and extending it to cover the southern tail, the 2-mile extension that's been added or is being added to 95 on the southern end, and includes the extension of the HOV lanes north to Washington to cover 395. If no questions, I would recommend approval of this motion.
Ms. Hines?
I would move approval of the motion.
Second.
Any discussion or comments on this? This is what was briefed last month by Ms. Shaw. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Lawson?
Thank you. The second item before you is also related to 95. This is the action of the CTB that is actually designating the HOV lanes as hot lanes on the additional portions of 95, 395.
Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Connors. Any comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Mr. Lawson. Ms. Snyder, good morning.
I have one item this morning. It's a land conveyance. The City of Hampton has requested by resolution the right-of-way and permanent easements that were acquired as part of the Route 10 project. We recommend this conveyance.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Ms. Snyder. Yes. Mr. Kilpatrick was pointing out that project was so old, it was Elizabeth City County when it was first established. So, well, things happened since the English named that county, right? I think is right. Mr. Thrasher, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We have one item this morning with a limited access modification in our Hampton Roads Construction District dealing with segment 2 of 64. We are modifying this for stormwater basin facilities. It's been endorsed by the city manager of Newport News, the county administrator of York County, as well as Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization and FHWA. MDOT would request approval of the modifications.
Make a motion we approve.
Second.
Second. Any discussion or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thanks.
Pastor, thank you. Ms. Pryor, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary, members of the board. I have two items for you today. The first item is the amendment of 6 projects to the 6-year improvement program. One is in Hampton Roads, funded with HR TAC funds. The other 5 are in Northern Virginia. They are safety, ITS, CMAQ projects, and 2 projects that are part of the Atlantic Gateway. I
So
recommend your approval.
these are all monies not going through Smart Scale, but additional monies put on by these regions.
That's
for
correct.
Project, yes. Is there a motion?
Make a motion.
Is there a second, Ms. Hines? Second, okay. Any comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right.
The second item is our normal monthly transfers of surplus funds from completed projects to underway projects. I recommend your approval.
Mr. Brown? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Ms. Pryor. Good morning, Ms. Holland.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary, members of the board. Last month, we brought before you a draft list of locally owned structurally deficient bridges, and this month we're requesting your approval to allocate state of good repair funds to that original list, as well as to add them into the 6-year improvement program.
Is there a motion?
Can I make just
Yes.
a real brief comment? And maybe it's something we can explore down the road, but what I've learned in the State of Good Repair program is, in looking at some projects where their State of Good Repair money was not requested because there was already a plan within the jurisdiction or locality, that's a very proactive effort by the jurisdiction to maintain the structures. And so they tend to fall low on the priority to get State of Good Repair money because the locality has already gone ahead and funded the bridge. And that's kind of what we want, right, is to maintain that structure. So I just wonder if there's some way to find some method to incentivize jurisdictions to proactively maintain these, because I guess at the end of the day, localities and jurisdictions let the bridges fall apart more, the structures get into worse shape, get the money first.
Well, no, there's supposed to be a maintenance of effort in that regard, and that Mr. Kilpatrick is charged with making sure they maintain the bridges and things in the same way we do, and when we pass on monies to them.
As the Secretary said, there is a maintenance of effort required, and locally owned bridges like our bridges, the goal, frankly, is to never get on this list. Using our maintenance funds to make sure that our bridges don't get to this condition. Now, the reality is bridges will deteriorate, and at some point, I use it's sort of the analogy between painting the siding and replacing the siding. That at some point you have to do that major repair, but there is a maintenance of effort requirement on these projects to ensure that localities aren't just fundamentally letting them go until they get bad enough that they can get on the list.
And you feel like, is that happening?
The answer is yes. So some localities more proactive than others, but I think that the attention that this program brings to all bridges and roads in the Commonwealth, I think ultimately is going to raise the condition everywhere. I think that this is bringing attention at the local government level too to the need to maintain their assets. So I wouldn't say, again, you have some jurisdictions that are stronger than others, but we're not noticing a race to the bottom or let's let it go and then we'll get some money.
And that's the fear.
Yeah.
So you let it go so far that the state has no.
He has the ability to withhold money if they're not using it, maintaining the bridges, or take the money back and do it himself. And we looked at this issue several years ago on that, and we found that, quite frankly, that there were a disparity between those doing it well and those others. And so we're cognizant, but no, he, as the commissioner, if they're not using the money appropriately, he has the ability to withhold that and do it himself.
Thank you.
Okay, we still have an issue in front of us. Is there a second? Second. Any other further comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Sir, I would also like to add that we do have a couple districts that may have the potential to bring additional projects next month. And so, because they could leverage some of the state of good repair as well as other funds, and we would like to have the opportunity to bring those projects to you next month to amend this list.
So what may happen, we have urban balances that exist in some of the localities, and they must obligate those balances before the end of this year, or they basically those are returned for the statewide state of good repair. So we're seeing some real proactive work at the local level, trying to put those urban dollars, those balances to work to add a few more of these state of good repair projects.
Well, part of that's because we said if you don't put them to work, we're going to sweep them.
Well, that helps.
Yeah. And so there's a continuing effort here to make sure we have monies all funneled through the appropriate things and not a lot of money sitting around.
So the report that we pushed out to you yesterday from ARPA doesn't differentiate between state-owned bridges and local bridges. It's all bridges. So Virginia is being scored on all bridges. So we want to make sure the entire system, not just our system, but the entire system is improved, because that's really what we're being scored on. And frankly, most times the public doesn't know whether that's a state-owned bridge or a locally owned bridge. They just know it's a bridge and they expect it to be safe.
And that's one of the reasons why we made State of Good Repair all those assets. But it's very exactly your point, Mr. Rose, and also incumbent upon Mr. Gilpatrick to make sure it's not instead of they are. So we certainly understand that. So. All right, so what will happen is, once we have that information, Mr. Kilpatrick, I guess you can get that out to the board members as soon as possible.
What will happen at the district level, they'll bring those projects back to you to brief you on them, and then Ms. Allman can bring them forward next month for consideration.
Right. Okay, thank you. Ms. Brown, good morning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I have 2 action items for you this month. Action item number 8 is a request for economic development access funds. This request was submitted by Augusta County and the Stanton District. Interchange Group will build a 108,000 square foot facility and invest over $6 million on a site within the Mill Place Commerce Park. Following Augusta County's resolution and request of this project, Sumitomo Drive Technologies has announced its plans in January of this year to relocate its operations in a long-term lease arrangement within 72,000 square feet of the interchange facility. Sumitomo Drive Technologies expects to invest approximately $4 million in their new facility and plans to create 15 additional jobs in addition to their current 33 employees over the next couple of years. Augusta County will administer the design and construction of the approximately 1,500-mile-long road to serve this development. The Virginia Economic Development Partnership has determined that Sumitomo Drive Technologies is a qualifying business for our program. We request your approval of this request and $250,000 in economic development access funds for this roadway.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So move. Since
Yates? Is there a second?
How about just a second of discussion?
Yeah, we got a second here? Okay, there we go. We got a second here. Okay, now discussion. Mr.
I just think if you read your legislative report, there's 2 bills in there moving swiftly along through the General Assembly that create a moratorium on collecting this money back when these projects don't work out. And it is right in the eye.
It was a
moratorium on all projects, not just one particular one.
You mean collecting them back? That's correct. It moves it out 36 months. It's
One's 36, one's 48. I guess
I think they're going to conform it to 36.
And the good news is this one already has
I understand
business, and so it should not be in that situation.
The bill also
this kind of legislation further says it.
The bill also says they got to keep the bond in place and everything else has to be there. So we are still protected in that. That was the request, and we brought to us, we voted against it. I get it. I'm all right with that. But the General Assembly decided they wanted to give these localities more time. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm saying they chose their prerogative to do that. I actually think this whole program, all these programs, and it need to be looked at in terms of what we're doing with economic development across everything.
If they're doing a big reform package on that, I'd love to see them look at this to be a piece of it.
And I agree in that. So that's one of the things where, as we see what comes out of the reforms there, whether it's Go for Jimmy or whatever, I have talked with legislators about these type of programs need to be looked at, whether or not it certainly is our role in terms of using Transportation Trust Fund. Because quite frankly, the Transportation Trust Fund, the underlying law is they must be used for the construction or maintenance of public assets, particularly Virginia public assets in that. And typically, that's not giving to a third party. It's given to, in this case, happens to be the locality of the Commonwealth in there. But the question is, with smart scale and all that, are these funds still, you get their highest purpose? And so
There's two complaints. One of mine is that we don't have the wherewithal to evaluate the proposals. And number two, they do have a law there that we do it, and then they override the legal scheme that they put us into. And so it's just, I'd love to hand it off to somebody else.
the good news, I push back a little bit on the first one. The good news is they've made it so prescriptive, either the thing qualifies or it doesn't. And unlike the economic development stuff where there's points, either this one, it's pretty prescriptive. But I'm not suggesting, I got all that, and you're right. The question is whether that should be in this area or whether it should be just in Opportunity Fund, instead of having these particular programs.
The good news is that's the last I'll say about it.
No, it won't be I will say it won't be the last. No, it won't be the last I see it, but I do think they need to be looked at. Absolutely. So.
Mr. Phelan has a comment on that.
I will offer that based on the December resolution, we did inform localities that were under the prior bond moratorium that their first 20% was due the end of January. And so all the localities did comply, so we have collected that first 20% for all the localities except for Scott County, which actually was able to demonstrate their investment and offset having to pay us anything back. And we think Bottle is very close to doing that also.
I think they got you the contract completed.
Yeah, I think we've asked one more thing, but I think that should be wrapped up today. So.
No reflection on Mr. Brown.
Mr. Fralin.
Mr. Chairman, I'll raise this issue now, and I think recognizing the legislative and executive branch prerogatives, and they have the ability to change the law if they want to, and they can do that. And I do think it is interesting that we put the rule in place in December. We've already got 20% payments. We've got people running checks up there to make sure they get the money in now, and all of a sudden all that's going to go away.
It is what it is.
So,
I think, and this is where, this is where the political process is not all the time so specifically about a particular program.
Well, and we all work for the governor, I guess, but an amendment to make it apply to the Scott one, which caused the problem in the first place, might be better than a statewide moratorium.
Right.
But then I'm not governor.
Is there any more discussion or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, and then action item number 9 is a deallocation of economic development access funds. This request was submitted by Bland County, located in the Bristol District. Bland County did receive a prior economic development access allocation of $650,000 in 2013. The project has not been constructed or initiated. No charges have been made against this project. Bland County has indicated that they no longer think the project is viable. When they initially requested the funds, they did have a development or developer that they thought was going to locate within their park that has made the decision not to come there, and they decided they don't want to take the risk of building the roadway without having a commitment, so they have therefore asked that we deallocate the funds. So we request your approval of deallocating the $650,000 that was previously allocated.
Mr. Stinson.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Gladly second that.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Williams. Any comments or discussion? Mr. Fralin?
Mr. Chairman, I was waiting for this one because given the fact that if they waited about a month, they might not have to get rid of this money and they can hold on to it. I'm not sure they were aware of that when they agreed to the deallocation of the money. I mean, this is a perfect example. I'm for this. I'm going to vote for this. This is $650,000. It's going back into the fund so that we can fund actual real projects out there. If this happened a month later, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I guess if they agree to give it up, they give it up. I don't know why they would agree if they could hold on to it for 48 months.
And I think they realize that even with the moratorium doesn't forgive them having to pay it back. It just gives them a period of time when they're not paying it back. So at the end of the day, they'd still have to pay the money back if they didn't attract someone.
Yeah, but they would get 48 more months to try.
3 years from now, you'll see another bill just like this.
Yeah, I think that we can, they've made their decision, just like us, they know laws can change or whatever, so I have no problem us moving on this. And by the way, everybody, this really is all about one county in that, and it doesn't preclude them from paying back, and many have said they're going to pay back regardless of what the moratorium is. Yeah, so based on that, I would suggest that if they were to take this action, if they want to come back, I don't think they want to. I think most people have done this in the right way and simply are dealing with the issue on that. Any more comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Brule, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I have one action item for you today that would make two adjustments to the current 6-year program, both for projects in the Stanton District. One is related to a transit facility in Augusta County, and the other is related to a technology project for Harrisonburg Transit. Mr. Whitworth isn't here today, but I did get the opportunity to brief him last week, and he concurred with both of those changes. And so DRPT recommends your approval.
I'd move that we adopt the resolution.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Brown, thank you. Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Before we move off of this, though, Ms. Mitchell, the issue with Metro and the withholding of funds, we probably are going to have budget language that allows Ms. Mitchell to do some things. If that doesn't happen, then probably we'll bring to your attention next month things for the board to consider so that we do not impact service to our transit providers while these funds are being withheld. There are some ways to do that because depending on the year of the money, how they flow, and when this is going to come in. So Ms. Mitchell's working on that. We think the easiest way would just put a budget, and Mr. Donahue's working with the money committees on. But to the extent they don't act, and certainly even next month we can tell you what the budget amendment does, but to the extent they don't, we'll probably come to you with a strategy that may or may require action on your part.
Mr. Chairman, you raise a good point, and I think, if the legislature and the governor decide to put a budget amendment in to cover this and move money basically to cover the fact that the federal government's not paying us the money they should be paying us. If you come to this board with it, I'm just speaking for me, I'm not sure it's fair to everybody else in the Commonwealth to shift rail and transportation money around to cover the federal government's debt while they impose restrictions on us that I don't think are fair.
I would agree either. I don't think we should penalize people in the Commonwealth, though, by taking their...
You're penalizing somebody in the Commonwealth one way or the other, right?
You're using...
Depends on
how we work out.
We'll serve judgment to see how we're moving the money around, but it's...
Yeah, that's right. I think the idea, no one thinks what their action is appropriate. But to penalize people, let's say, in Roanoke, or anywhere, but in that manner because of their, particularly other parts of the state were not impacted by what we're doing, that even seems even worse.
Well, my only point is, and I may misunderstand, but to the extent we've got to shift money around for WMATA to cover those...
No, that's not WMATA. It's not WMATA. We're talking about, they're cutting across the state. We're talking about people in...
Well, I understand it. They're withholding our entire statewide pot because they don't like what we're doing on WMATA.
5%, yeah.
Do I have that right?
That's correct, yes. 5% of our statewide urban allocation, which is Roanoke, Hampton Roads, Northern Virginia.
My point is, why would we withhold money all around the state because the problem's at WMATA? Why wouldn't you hold the money from WMATA?
The issue is, it's not just being held with WMATA. They're withholding it from Roanoke Transportation.
I understand, Mr. Chairman, but money's fungible. So, right, so say we're not getting $1 million from the federal government, okay?
That goes to Roanoke.
It goes to Roanoke and Lynchburg and all around, right? But the reason we're not getting it is because of their issues at WMATA. And so, just like WMATA's not going to get some money too, right? Because they're withholding their money. My point is, why should the rest of the state be penalized for a problem that's going on up there?
Well, we're not doing the penalizing. The state, the federal government is, and we're trying to keep the state from being
We're not
penalized.
connecting. Maybe we can talk offline. But
Yeah, I mean, what we're saying is, we don't think the Roanoke people should be penalized.
I don't either.
And if that's the case, then if we don't move money there, they will be penalized.
I understand that, but we're moving money.
It's temporary, first of all. And this would just be to cover any sort of cash flow issues created. But the funds themselves are not necessarily fungible that we could. They're not necessarily. They're not funds that could have been going to WMATA that we're choosing to reallocate elsewhere. So.
I don't.
Mr. Donahue, you have thoughts, but you might want to come up to the microphone so people.
And maybe Mr. Donahue or Ms. Mitchell can address this, but my understanding is this is contingent money. It's contingent on us doing something that's satisfactory to them. It's not that we just have to do something. There's another judgment that's going to. This is not necessarily temporary.
Well, it's forfeited. It's not forfeited money. Yeah, we're eventually going to get this done. The question is how long. But what I'm having difficulty with is the penalty by not doing nothing. If we don't do something, then a lot of people across the Commonwealth are going to get hurt. I can't help myself. I don't agree with what the feds are done, but by us not acting, we've complicated the problem. Is all I'm saying. So,
Mr. Chair, Mr. Fralin, if I could just clarify, I think the issue you raised about the federal funds. This is not a block grant that comes to the state where we divvy it up here at this board. These are formula funds described to specific areas that are being withheld by the federal government. So there's no discretion for us to say we want to penalize Roanoke because we chose Roanoke was the best guy to penalize. There are federal transit funds that are ascribed solely to the Roanoke urbanized area that they're withholding 5% of.
Gotcha.
We have no discretion in that.
I didn't understand.
Yeah, they don't even come directly to
so
us.
what we're contemplating is that there would be a treasury loan that we'd be able to tap into budget language to allow us to smooth this out until this monies are received. That does not take away our displeasure with what we believe is an appropriate action by the federal authorities. So, just wanted to alert you that we do not want to disrupt any service in the Commonwealth in that sense. Okay, what's next? The next after this, we have, Mr. Siles. Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Since the board last met, we've taken in bids on 73 projects valued at $187 million. 7 of those are above $5 million and thus have to be awarded by the CTB. So on your ballot before you, the first 3 pages, there are 5 asphalt paving jobs. They're all within the budget. They all had competition. We think they all represent good value, and if it pleases the board, I'd like to present those as one action item.
Mr. Chairman, I need to ask a question before we do that.
Yes.
Would this include the branch design build bid?
No, this is just the plant mix contracts.
Thank you.
That'll come separately.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let me make sure I've got, what number awards are we?
We have 506,
right,
112,
right,
906, 907, and 926.
Okay, and it looks like all of those are under what we anticipated cost. Is that correct in that regard? So, you guys all right taking them in block?
I have to abstain. I have a conflict on one, so
Okay, all right. Well, I think I'm okay with taking them in block if you guys are.
Yes.
Unless you want to pull one out and go separately, so you can abstain and vote on the others.
I think it's going to pass if you just want to abstain on the block vote. That's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to be the parliamentarian, but if he only wants to abstain on one, you can't do it as a block.
Yeah, that's right. You got to abstain on them all, or, I mean, I know.
Pull that one off.
So which one is it you can't, which one that you can't do?
506.
506, okay. Let's take, then, 112, 906, 906 you can't do? Or 506?
The first ones.
The first one you can't do.
You can vote
So
that
let's vote that, let's vote 506 first. And that would be, so we need to, you have to abstain, so we need a motion on number 506. Is there a second?
Second.
You need to abstain now, Mr.
I abstain.
Abstain, okay. Is there any other comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Now, there's four remaining. Those are numbers 112, 906, 907, and 926. We'll take those in block. Is there there's a move by Mr. Williams? Is there a second? Any other discussion or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next project is K73. This is in the city of Roanoke. This is a widening of 10th Street Phase 2. We've analyzed the bids. We think it represents good value, recommending it for award.
Okay, now this one is over the estimated construction cost.
It is. We had 4 bids, so we had good competition, including the local contractor Branch. The bids, the Branch bid was actually 38% higher, so we think we have good competition. This was well within the engineer's estimate, which is our analysis estimate. It is above budget, but it is exactly what we expected to pay.
And if I could confirm with John or Ken that adequate funds exist in the 6-year plan to cover this?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'm having trouble finding this one. I'm being particular because I've got to abstain on it.
Page 73, it's on page, let's see, it's 404.
It'd be page 404.
Slide 88. Slide 88. 88? Well, All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, is it slide 85, 10 million?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Okay.
I just got a question from Ms. Pryor, though. When you say you have them in the 6-year plan, where are they in the 6-year plan?
Understanding that the increase is due to an additive component to the bid.
I'm sorry,
The increase is due to an additive component to the bid, and it's being covered by the Water Authority.
Oh, in other words, there's other sources of funds that are being put in?
Yes, not
Okay,
from the
so it's not, we're not taking other monies from other project, you're going to have another source. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, just want to make sure.
That's a utility betterment.
Okay, gotcha, okay, so we've got another source of funds. That's fine. Okay, is there any motion for this? I know you have to abstain.
No, not on this one.
No, not on this one. Motion, is there a second? Any other discussion or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, all right.
And the final project for presentation today is the design-build project, I-95 safety improvements on Route 3. We had 7 bids. We've analyzed the bids. We think they represent good value, and we're recommending it for award.
Mr. Chairman, on this, I need to abstain on this, and the reason I need to do that is because one of my employers has a contract with Branch on another matter that, well, I'll just leave it at that, and I need to abstain on this.
All right, Mr. Connors, is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
Any other further comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
One's abstained. Okay. Any threshold reports, Charlie, from you?
No, that's just for the board's information.
In that regard. Okay. I've got a couple of things before we break here. The public comment we had this morning, that is one of the reasons I'm introducing you the V-Trans. This effort, this thing that says that we're not looking at it, and you guys you can just draw a line on the map, I take exception to. So that's why I'm going to, the next step here, I believe, is in V-Trans and your input into how that is developed. And that's where I was saying that you look at, are we looking at the corridors of statewide significance? Are we effectively planning and identifying? That's where I believe it should be done, not sitting out there, sitting with somebody and saying we're going to have a project. I do believe they need to come up through the system in that. So we'll let you know, we'll start that process next month, and you will have input in identifying those areas, and so if projects come up within those areas, you will have input in making sure that the overall connection is taking place. That doesn't mean we can't put a project in, but I'm thinking this is a better way to do it and exercising your authority in that. So, but once we get through that, and then we'll determine if there's something else that the board would like to do in that, because obviously that is the first screen. Is it in the 6-year, is it in the VTrans plan? And that's where I think a lot of these visioning and projects and are we looking at connecting would need to take place. That then gives the people developing the projects, particularly VDOT working with the localities, they understanding that these are the projects that have to be developed in that area. So anyway, just want to let you know, I think there's we'll get through that process and then determine, is this what you're envisioning, making sure you have the information you need in that. Yes, Ms. Hines.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just echo a little bit. Yesterday as we talked about the looking at the limited access, we talked about there isn't one size fits all in the Commonwealth, that we're a lot of different places. And I noted that the speaker in particular questioned some of the ways that we make sure we have continuous options for people to get to work and to get to transit in Northern Virginia. And I would just want to say for the whole group, those layers make a huge difference in the number of single occupant vehicles that are getting on the roads. And so while it may not be immediately evident why you'd put money into a bike trail or making sure sidewalks are in place, in fact, those missing links can make all the difference in Northern Virginia. And so it's not about the cost of the project, it's about the efficacy of the project at moving people. And I just think as we think about Northern Virginia and some of the other really congested areas, we need to be able to talk about that too.
Well, it gets back to the fact that, look, and I say this and it's not like a broken record, but there are consequences to limited resources. I mean, it all gets back to that. I would love to have an area where, I wasn't constrained. A lot of these things would be great. We are constrained. The question is, and does that mean we got the perfect, that'd be great to say, we need to build this $3 billion road. That's what, well, we're not going to build a $3 billion road unless something happens, unless there's other ways to do it. So that's really where I keep coming back to. That's what we were doing before. We were having these conversations when we were doing nothing. And now we're doing quite a bit and moving it forward. Is it all we need to do? Probably not. But we're certainly in a much better position than we were a few years ago having these discussions, saying we need to do this, we got to have this, I want to have the Bach County Parkway, I'm going to have just all pie in the sky. So I am just a big believer in making sure we make pragmatic and move it down there, and hopefully that'll open it up to other things. Plus, I'll point out too how it connects to other areas. We were hearing all about we had to have all these roads because it was killing Dulles. Well, when we got into the real data, was not origination and destination traffic. That kept going on. It was the hub. We could have built all the roads we want. I'm not saying we shouldn't build those roads. Don't get me wrong. But that wasn't going to fix Dulles' problem. It was the hub traffic. So that's why I'm saying, I think, it's nice to say you got to understand who the constituents are and what they're coming in. I think the VTrans is really where we can understand how all these different multimodal how it all works together. Because sometimes we get myopic on, this is, if we only had one more road, we'd have more people going there. And that was not the answer at Dulles. I'm not saying we don't need to build those roads, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying the immediate issue was getting the hub back in, because that's where the millions of declining traffic had gone to in that regard. So I just think that's why it's important that we get VTrans, and it's what they were accomplishing, and then when you're making these decisions, you have but you ought to be the one setting the parameters in V-Trans. What the board in that regard, so. Yes, Mr. Grozinski?
We had a conversation with Ms. Hines and Scott and I last evening, and I think it would be imperative that sometime between the adoption of the 6-year plan and the retreat or meeting that we're going to have, that all the districts get together with the participating towns and counties and municipalities and have a session with their district member and the at-large members who are available on, now after the second time, what do they see as the pluses and minuses of smart scale, so as we come to this retreat, we're armed with the pros and cons to have an intelligent debate and not have things just off the top of our individual heads, which we all have input on, but also from the localities we represent. And I think there's going to be a 60-day window maybe to do that before we get together for that retreat, but after the adoption of this year's plan.
Yeah, I think that's very good, and I would encourage you all to be in that and to do that. Some of it's easier than others. You just go to the TPO or the PDC, and you probably get it. Others may have to do other means, but you are the eyes and ears of the Commonwealth of Virginia in your districts. And you can have, if you want to have a town hall meeting, you certainly are welcome to do that and to get the information in terms of representing what we have to bring together as a group. So I encourage that quite a bit in that. So,
Mr. Secretary, my staff can facilitate that with any of the members. We'd absolutely be glad to do that to give that opportunity.
I just want to add something to what you're saying too. We've been going through the process, and I believe we all have been hearing tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Because while projects for smart scale, must be V-Trans to make a need, I do think matching them up with the highest priorities could be an important step for us.
when you say highest priorities, you mean?
Tier 1, tier 2, where we're
in V-Trans.
Right, in V-Trans. Sure, yeah.
So, to me, this is a really good time to do that.
Yep, so, Mr. Tommy, you had something.
I was just going to say, similar to what Shannon just mentioned, I think it's a great time to do this. I'm really supportive of this next step. In the past, we've always just looked at our own individual districts. We spent 1 hour or 2 hours with our district administrator looking at the V-Tran. But pulling it together and having a broader discussion about the whole state, I think is critical. So I'm glad that we're doing it.
We realized that for 2.5 years, we've been solidly baked on getting this in, and we couldn't get to this point unless that worked. So, in that regard. So, I think this is exactly what we need to be doing. That's why we've got a year break before the board considers projects again. In fact, we probably, Carol, you probably ought to reach out. I'm thinking, what are you thinking? The retreat sometime in, we don't have a meeting in August. That's usually pretty bad, though, because y'all are mainly gone. So, I'm sorry? We have SASTO in August, yeah, so that's going to be hard. I hope you can all make that. It's down in Norfolk. So we need to maybe, when we have the conference, the governor's conference, that's in October. So maybe we ought to make the September meeting, sort of the retreat. I don't know how we're going to get this all in, or if we're going to have, or you want to make it separate. Or make it separate, we need to look at, Carol, can you just start?
There'll probably be an incentive, but I'm not going to be able to be there in September.
Right, September.
That may carry the day right there.
Well, we need to look at when's the right time, because that we need to be thinking about that, because it's going to come up on us pretty quickly.
I might not be on the board in September.
If he's not there, the questions later will be.
And I would probably like to do it someplace.
To even think
I don't know. You tell me. We need to do it in Richmond. because that's easy access for the staff, or does it matter? The retreat?
I don't know. Partial to Roanoke, but.
Yeah, that's right,
I
so,
don't know that it matters. I mean, logistically, yes, for staff here, but we can make it whatever suits the board.
I don't know, we'll take a look. I'd actually like to have it at a place where it's a little different environment, where we're just in that regard. So we'll take a look, we'll get going on that. So, okay, any,
Virginia Beach House.
I'm sorry, Mr. Patrick?
I just want to, I saw one of my predecessors sneak in here. I just want to recognize Commissioner Dave Gear, who was the commissioner when I started at VDOT a few years ago, so.
He's still got hair, Charlie.
Yeah. So, welcome, Dave.
Next meeting is here, still here. So, again, V-Trans, Mr. Donahue will be a big part of that meeting. Of course, we'll set some time aside for the any more on smart scale. The hearings we're starting to get set up, so they'll be coming up. We're working through here. I think anything else? I think that's it. Yep. Okay, well, thanks everybody. Unless anybody got anything for the board? Not? Okay, thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you all for